Breaking news tonight. About 30 minutes ago, the Alabama State Senate passed a bill that essentially outlaws abortion in Alabama in conflict with settled federal law as interpreted by the United States Supreme Court. The bill outlaws abortions except in cases that involve a serious health risk to the pregnant woman. Republicans voted down an amendment that would have added exceptions for victims of rape and incest. That vote was 21-11. The bill now goes to the governor's desk. AL.com reports that on Friday, the governor said she would wait to make a decision on whether to sign the bill into law after the final version reaches her desk. But if the governor does sign that bill, doctors who perform the procedure could be charged with a felony punishable by up to 99 years in prison. Doctors attempting the procedure could face up to 10 years in prison. Joining our discussion now, Cecile Richards, the former president of Planned Parenthood. She is the co-founder of the new women's political group, Supermajority. She's also the author of the book, Make Trouble. Cecile, your reaction to the passage of this bill tonight?
Well, this is a terrible day for women and for families in this country. This is, as you say, this is the most extreme abortion ban that's ever been passed. Obviously, Governor Ivey has a really important decision to be made. This bill should not be signed into law. As you said, not only it would essentially end all abortions, legal abortions in the state of Alabama, but it also would put doctors into jail for up to 99 years. And obviously this is completely flies in the face of Roe versus Wade, a court decision that was made more than 40 years ago. This is a right women have had for all those years, and women are not going to go back in America. Is there any chance that the governor will veto this? I have no idea, but if she's actually thinking about the future and the well-being of the people in her state, she should not sign this bill. I was so struck by one of the senators tonight, Senator Singleton, who talked about what it was like to be a father of two daughters, and that the state of Alabama, by passing this kind of legislation, is basically saying to them, you don't matter. We don't care about you. It's a really terrible day for the state of Alabama. What could their legal theory be? This is a direct and complete and full conflict with Roe versus Wade. Do they actually believe they can get this case to the Supreme Court, and this Supreme Court with two Trump nominees will then completely strike down Roe versus Wade? Because that's what you'd have to do to sustain this law. You're correct. And I mean, I don't know what's in their mind. As we know, this is not the first time they've passed bills that have been unconstitutional. But look, I think women are very worried. Women and men in this country are very worried now with the confirmation of Judge Kavanaugh. Roe is hanging by a very thin thread. But I think the other thing that it's really important to remember, this is a country that supports abortion rights overwhelmingly. In fact, support for Roe is stronger than it's ever been. And I think that's one of the reasons we see women not only running for office, the vast majority of voters in this country, 20% of Americans have marched or taken part in a protest since the Trump inauguration, and the main reason has been women's rights. So I think this is I certainly hope that this law is declared unconstitutional, but I will tell you, this is sending a chill across the country, and women are noticing, and women are organizing. And the Alabama legislature has a history, as you say, of passing these bills that do get struck down in federal court at great legal expense to the state in legal fees as they go through this process. And so it's possible that some of these legislators have just gotten comfortable with the idea that they can do this as a stunt and as a way of showing, where they stand on this, knowing that they'll never have to live with the consequences. That may be true, Lawrence, but obviously it's still incredibly irresponsible to pass this kind of legislation. And I think I think women are taking notice. It used to be, and I think Rachel mentioned this earlier, it used to be that they passed these kinds of bills saying that they were supposedly to protect the health and the well-being of mothers. This is an all-out abortion ban. The legislators have said it. The governor now can do the right thing and stand up for women in the state of Alabama. But I'm telling you, this is something that women are noticing all across the country, and women are going to be the deciding voters in the 2020 election. What does an issue like this now do in the presidential election and the congressional elections? I think it's going to absolutely put the issue of safe and legal abortion on the ballot, and as it has been, but more in a theoretical sense. I think with the confirmation of Kavanaugh, the real shift in the court, obviously Justice Breyer's dissent this week, I think people are concerned that this is a court that is ready potentially to overturn precedent and a decision that was made more than 40 years ago that guaranteed the constitutional right to abortion. And one thing, Lawrence, I think is important to remember. Look, abortion existed before Roe versus Wade. It was simply unsafe, and women died routinely, healthy women, in emergency rooms across America. And I'm just telling you, women in this country are not going to go back to those days.
Cecile, I think this is the first time that we have sat here as close watchers of the Supreme Court on this issue for the last 4 decades.
Yep.
And we really don't know how this court would rule on this.
I think we don't. I mean, obviously, a lot of us really voiced this concern in the Kavanaugh hearings and in the confirmation hearings. But listen, Donald Trump said he was only going to appoint justices who would overturn Roe versus Wade. And I think we have to start believing him and taking him at his word. And we'll see if that, in fact, is what he's done.
Cecile Richards, thank you very much for joining us on this breaking news tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you. Thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on the button below for more from The Last Word and the rest of MSNBC.